Hey, it's Michelle Hart, mornings on 107.9 LITE-FM, and if I look a little sweaty to you today, it's because I had a chance to be part of the moving tribute for the 16th anniversary of 9/11/2001, and we'll talk to my friend Chad a little later in the video. He was the late captain for Team Red, White, and Blue today, and he'll tell you exactly what the tribute was about and how it impacted the Treasure Valley. But I think what amazes me the most is that 9/11 happened 16 years ago, so these kids who are seniors in high school are learning about it the same way we learned about World War I, World War II, Vietnam as a chapter in a history book. And for those of us who were old enough to remember it, we still remember it like it was yesterday. Like I remember being in 8th grade history class. We were going over our current event assignment when our vice principal came and knocked on the door and pulled our teacher out in the hallway. And when our teacher came back in, he said, hey, if this assignment had been due tomorrow, a lot of you would have picked this as your current event. And that's when we turned on the TV and we saw the first tower at the World Trade Center smoking. And between classes, that's when the second tower had been hit. And while we were in orchestra, I found out about the Pentagon and Shanksville after that. And I just remember having this feeling that something just wasn't right in the world that day. Something was completely off. And I just couldn't wait to get to the prayer service at our church that night, where everyone was holding hands and singing songs and praying and just being there to be there through it together. If you do want to share these stories with your teenager who's in high school right now and give them kind of a different perspective of what's going on, this is how a lot of my friends at Townsquare Media remembered it.
On 9/11, I didn't know anything about it until I walked into our office, and everyone in the office was in the conference room because we had a large TV, and the first tower had been hit. As I was standing there in the doorway basically saying what's going on, the second tower was hit, and that's when shock set in. Everybody was numb, and then the rest of the day was history. I mean, that was it.
It was crazy. I was at my girlfriend at the time's place. I was going to school at University of Idaho, and her roommate came into her room screaming. I'm like, dude, what in the heck is going on? And she's like, you have to turn the TV on. And of course, like everybody, we just clicked it on and it was like, you know, what's going on? And of course the news came on and, you know, we turned to Today's Show and we were watching and the flames were going in the first tower. I'm just like, okay, this is really weird, thinking it was just going to be one of those things that was just like, you know, a plane crash and it's horrible news. But we started watching in time to see the second plane come in. And then after that, I'm getting goosebumps. And then after that, you know, the feeling of anger and just complete helplessness and just like what in the world is going on. Like we were freaked out. And I remember sitting there watching for a good hour or so and watching the towers come down and just, you know, you freaked out. You didn't know what was going on. There were no answers. It was so up in the air. And I remember leaving her house and coming back to where I was, to where I was going, you know, where I was living, and the entire campus, which is usually a buzz, and there were tons of people around, was completely silent. And you know, I will always remember the smell, which was so weird because like what was normally a very busy Tuesday morning, you know, kids talking about what they did the night before and you know, just the hustle and bustle of a college campus was completely quiet. The smell was kind of like this sweet, weird, it just was an awkward feeling, and it was just completely deafening silent. And it was really weird. Like you know, walked into the fraternity where I lived and like without even a question, 60 guys were sitting there watching TV, and all of us were talking about, okay, well, who's going down to the recruiting office today? And it became a, you know, which branch people wanted to serve in. And I can't tell you how many guys and buddies from our house ended up going into service specifically because of it. And it was just one of those things, like you just remember every minute of the day. You remember the emotions, the ups and the downs, and you know, just being scared and being angry and mad. And you know, it's one of those things, you never forget it, and you never will be able to, hopefully never have to recreate that feeling again. And it just was an insane moment that will always stick with me.
I was actually living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, and I was working in mornings, and we had TVs up around the studio. And I remember looking up and a couple of us thinking that it was a trailer for a new movie. When we saw the planes going into the tower, we thought that it was like a new Tom Cruise movie or something like that. And then when we found out what it was devastating. I have family and friends that live in the area, and immediately tried to get in touch with them and then couldn't. It was a really, really scary time. Plus living in Charlotte in a big city, wondering, were we next? It was a very, very scary day.
Okay, so let's see. So I was in 8th grade, and it was just the end of first period, and one of the teachers came running into the room and said that the World Trade Center was on fire. And most of us were kind of too young to know what the World Trade Center was, but we knew it was kind of a building, you know, or a collection of buildings in New York City or whatever. So then by the time that period ended and we had passing period to get to our second period, the science teacher had it up on TV, and that's when it really hit us that the gravity of what the situation was. And it was right after, I believe, the second plane hit, and it was, I remember just this big overcoming, like, just feeling of fear and not knowing what's going on. And that kind of stayed with us the whole day. Originally from the suburbs of Chicago, so a lot of air traffic is always above ahead. You always hear jets and stuff like that, kind of like here in Boise. No airplanes. I remember going out for gym and no airplanes at all. A couple of fighter jets went over actually, and that was about it. And that was, everybody was just kind of, you know, not feeling great about it. And then I remember going home, and every channel on TV was covered with news and everything like that. And it was pretty scary for a long time. Yeah, that was my 9/11 story. And really, the world's never been the same since.
Hey, my name's Isley, and I remember where I was September 11, 2001. I was actually living in Mexico at the time. I was about 12 years old, and I just remember my heart sinking seeing the news. And I got a different perspective of it because I was in a different country, so it was really kind of heartbreaking to not be able to be with my friends and my family and kind of get that sense of community. But it was also really nice to see that people from other countries were kind of backing the U.S. up and feeling just as bad for everyone as we were as Americans. So that's where I was, and I just want to say thank you to all of our first responders who always just go into the danger zone to help people out just like they did that day. So we love you. We'll never forget you. We miss you.
Hi, I'm Chad Rohr. I'm the captain of the Boise Team Red, White, and Blue chapter here in Boise, obviously. And today we're relaying the flag from Discovery Park all the way out to Caldwell. And out in Caldwell, we're going to be meeting at the CVMH, or the Caldwell Veterans Memorial Park. There are about 50-60 people today that are going to be relaying it the whole way down. Everyone's taking about a half mile to a mile, and just handing off the flag and showing our support for 9/11 and making sure that we always remember what's going on 9/11. We have the flag of heroes, which is everyone who was, all the service members, or actually the civilians, and also those who were lost on 9/11.